Welcome to DMM Downloads. We are podcasting another conversation about DMM between Jeff Crabtree and me, Rudy Rivera. Jeff and I are teamed together in Northern Colorado in a ministry we call DMM NOCO. DMM NOCO is unleashing disciple-making movements in Northern Colorado, and we thought it a good idea to start a podcast as a way to bring awareness and resourcing to ordinary people who are passionate about making multiplying disciple makers in our natural networks. Thanks for joining us in this journey. We hope you get a DMM download from this conversation. Introduction, my name is Rudy Rivera. I'm here in Northern Colorado. I'm with my friend, Jeff Crabtree. Jeff, why don't you say hi?
Hi.
Yeah. And so we're here doing this new podcast. We're calling it Disciple Making Movement Downloads.
Sounds good to me, Rudy.
Sounds good. We like the phrase downloads. And so we're going to have these 15-minute segments where Jeff and I are talking about disciple making movements, movement in general. We're here in Northern Colorado thinking about these things, praying about these things, practicing these habits. But obviously we're on the internet, so if you're listening wherever you are, we hope this blesses you. Jeff, tell us a little bit about why we're here today.
Well, thanks, Rudy. Man, it's good to partner up with you. We've known each other for several years. And
Jeff, 6 years.
6 years now? That doesn't seem possible.
I know.
And you're 40 now, right?
Yeah, looking good.
We always kid each other about age. We're getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing to have found each other. The Lord put us together to kind of lean into some new kingdom initiatives, new paradigms of gospeling called disciple-making movements. And so we're really looking forward to this. We kind of talked as we started 2024 of some initiatives, and this was one of them, and we've been working on the other one, and now we're getting to kind of maybe lean into this about DMM, disciple-making movement downloads.
Yeah, so Jeff and I work together in a ministry that's been formed really organically, I would kind of say, what we call Disciple Making Movement Northern Colorado, DMM NOCO for short. So you'll find this podcast on the DMM NOCO website. You'll find it anywhere podcasts are found on the internet. But like Jeff said, one of the things we're trying to do here for Northern Colorado is bring awareness and resourcing to the people of Northern Colorado. I can tell you as somebody who's trying to practice DMM, I'm looking forward to this podcast because it gives me a chance. I get to hear Jeff download for us things that he's learned. He's been doing movement for longer than I have, and he's been all over the world, and he's really interfaced, I would say, movement leaders, right, Jeff, probably worldwide?
Yeah, I'm a part of a group called New Generations, and they're doing disciple-making movements in over 90 countries. So been able to get downloads from those who've been doing it for 25 years or more that God's using around the world to kind of do Book of Acts movements kind of stuff. So obviously most of this didn't originate with me for sure, but just getting downloads from different people around the world. So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Very exciting. And so I would say today's topic, we're going to have a topic every time. We'll see where the Lord takes every conversation. But today's topic really starts with the question of what is movement? When we say movement, what are we even talking about? And then I want Jeff to touch on, whether it's in this episode or the next one, I want him to touch on the thought, this phrase, which he's used with me, and that he didn't find movement, movement found him. So I just asked Jeff, hey, Jeff, tell us more about movement. What is movement? What are we talking about when we use that phrase? And then can you unpack the phrase, you didn't find movement, movement found you?
Yeah, great question, great questions. I'm still learning. I've been in the movement world for a little over 7 years. So to try to condense what movement is, I'm still having to try to shape that. But I guess probably the most elementary thing that we could say about movement is ordinary disciples multiplying other disciples in their natural networks. And I try to get our hearts around that, and then we could pull that apart and go deeper. But the reality is that in disciple-making movements, we really lean into the Great Commission and kind of lean off the other question. But I'd mentioned previously in our conversations that I was almost 40 years into traditional ministry as a senior pastor or senior leader in different contexts. I didn't even know there was another way to gospel. I didn't know there was really anything outside of the traditional church as I knew it, the legacy church, maybe we could describe it that way. And I tell people that obviously in those nearly 40 years as a senior leader, I knew about the Great Commission. I had exegeted it, I had taught it, I had preached it. It was on every piece of literature of any church that I launched or was a part of. But when I got exposed to disciple-making movements, which is a little different paradigm, and we can talk about that, I realized I'd really never stepped into the Great Commission. I knew about it. Again, like I said, I knew all kinds of things, but I never really lived it out. And so that was kind of the beginning of that. So when we try to say, what is disciple-making movements, is really saying, what did Jesus commission us to do when he left the earth? And he said, go and make disciples. Basically, go make disciples anywhere and everywhere. So disciple-making movements is that ordinary disciples, not just professionals, are learning to multiply other disciples in their natural networks.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I was in the early 90s, I was in a college-focused church, traditional church in Austin, Texas, when the Lord really grabbed a hold of my heart as a young follower of Christ. I already knew him and had been given a legacy of faith through my parents. But in terms of the Great Commission, I had really not been exposed much, even though I had a lot of Bible in my life. And missions was something you gave to overseas, But when I got to college, I became a part of a Great Commission Ministries Network church. That was the kind of the name of the network. And so I remember thinking, whoa, these people are serious about, let's reach this generation in this generation, or let's reach the nations in this generation. And so when Jeff and I started talking, which was, I think, 2 years into our relationship, but Jeff started talking about DMM, I was like, whoa, this reminds me of 20-something years ago, 30 years ago in my life. But it's also, there was some nuances as I've kind of walked a little bit further down the path of DMM and tried to become more of a practitioner. But anyhow, so when Jeff kind of talked to me, when, Jeff, you started mentioning these things, I was like, yeah, this sounds familiar, but also new in some ways. And so there was an appeal, I think, to my heart, and I think the Lord just knew that. But yeah, did you tell us more about you didn't find movement found me?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I wasn't really looking for a different thought pattern, mindset about gospel ministry. I had been, again, like I said, almost 40 years in traditional leadership. So I guess I would have to say there was some questions, there were some wounds, there was some skepticism, like, are we really getting the job done? Are we really moving the ball forward? Are we really focused on, getting the Great Commission accomplished? So there was those questions that were there, but I don't know that I was really looking for anything different or new. And I had planted a church, and we were doing a new church, and we were doing our work, and I got a call from an individual that was the president of an international ministry called Beyond out of Richardson, Texas. And I'd had some ministry experience to pastor pastors, and so I had some kind of networking and maybe favor to talk to senior pastors, and they had heard about that. So a guy by the name of Kent Parks, who is the president of Beyond, called me kind of out of the blue and said, hi, I'm Kent Parks from Beyond, and we do church planting movements or disciple-making movements to unreached people groups. And I won't give the whole story, but I said, well, thank you, Kent, and I'm glad, thank you for what you do. But I've never heard of church planting movements or disciple making movements. And he asked me a really interesting question. He said, are you interested in learning? And so what do I say? No, I've arrived. I've been almost 40 years. I can do traditional church in my sleep.
Right.
So it was an interesting question that I think God used to cause me to step into, well, I guess so. That's how I replied. I guess I'm willing to learn about something new or different that God's doing around the world. And so that's when he said to me, well, I'd like to invite you to read a book. The book was called Spent Matches by a pastor in Kansas City, Roy Moran, who was the chairman of the board of that particular group. And so that's where I say I got introduced to DMM, Disciple Making Movements. I didn't go looking for it.
Yeah.
It found me. It was the phone call from a guy I did not know, running a ministry I did not know, about a work of God globally that I did not know. So I just said it was kind of a sovereign act of God. Again, now I'm 7.5 years into the movement world, but again, I did not go looking for disciple making movements.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think, we're doing downloads. So what was the first download you think you got from reading the book or that conversation with Kent or movement finding you? Do you remember the first?
It's kind of hard for me to rewind seven
I'm
and a half
curious.
years.
I don't think we've talked about this, but I'm curious if...
I think obviously the challenge or the risk to pick up a book, which I love to read and do read a lot, so that wasn't outside of my wheelhouse, so reading another book. But I call it a dangerous book because I didn't know what this gentleman, Roy Moran, was going to present. And as I began to read it, I think my first download was there is another way to gospel. There's another way to advance the kingdom of God. There's another way to operate in ministry that I didn't know. I had been to Bible college, and so for nearly 40 years, I only knew one way to gospel. I only knew one way to lead churches. I only knew one way to maybe advance the kingdom of God, and it was through, just if we would call it the legacy church, the traditional church as we know it. So I think that was my biggest download, is maybe there's more to the Bible, maybe there's more to the gospel, maybe there's more to what Jesus had in mind than just Western Christianity. So I think that was a download, but that became a challenge to me as well.
Wow. And that was what year?
2017, 2018, right in there. I'm not, my wife is the detail person.
Okay, yeah.
But she'll go back. But 2017, 2018.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you may not remember this, but I met you in October, I think it was, October 2018, because we moved to town in early July, and a mutual acquaintance or friend of ours told me, you need to meet up with Jeff Crabtree. Like, I was, at the time, we had moved here, so I'm just looking to meet anybody, and I was like, sure, sounds good. And like I said, I don't think you, even though you were getting into movement world for maybe a year at that point, I don't think we started really talking about it until the end of 2020. And so that's always stood out to me as something important because, I feel like maybe I wouldn't have been ready, or, who knows how the Lord always works in his timeline in our lives. But I know for me, like I told you, once I did hear it, I was like, oh, this is taking me back. But like I wasn't there for a while. And so I'm really grateful that you waited for whatever reason, because who knows what would have happened in my life, But I'm really just thankful for that. So,
well, I'm very thankful for a relationship too. I can't think back there real well to know exactly, but you were a new friend, new relationship, new person, new pastor to town, and so obviously it wasn't my job to superimpose kind of where I was at and what I was learning. It was more like, wow, good to know you. I think that I have a pastoral side to that. You're a pastor. I've always cared about pastors.
Yeah.
Who pastors the pastor? And so I've always kind of leaned into that. So I just kind of wanted to get to know you relationally. And so I'm so thankful that God pulled us together, because we've been walking together now for many years, just in life and in ministry, but also in disciple-making movements.
Yeah. And so kind of with that, we'll kind of close and just say, you know, here, this is our first episode, and, you know, we plan to release these weekly, I think. And, you know, but the thought of it being a download, it's like, wow, okay, the Lord was bringing your life along this journey. He was bringing me through different circumstances into this journey. You propose, hey, let's talk about DMM. I'm like, boy, this feels familiar and good, but also I need to kind of wrestle with some things there at the end of 2020. But yeah, I 100% agree. I'm really grateful that you waited. I'm grateful the Lord had the timing. I'm grateful that we're together in this. And so for us, you know, we're not trying to superimpose on any of you listening. Like, you know, if you're listening to this, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're stepping into DMM thinking as we have been. But we're not here to superimpose that on you either. We're just saying, guys, we're going to try to download for y'all things that we're learning, specifically that Jeff's been learning, passing on some wisdom, and we'll just keep conversing and open the conversation on lots of topics regarding disciple-making movement. Anything to close before you're done?
Yeah, I'd just probably say that, you know, all journeys take first steps. And I took some first steps. You took some first steps. And for people listening, this may be a first step for them. They've never heard of disciple-making movements. And what is that? And what does it mean? And maybe God's working in their hearts like he was in yours and mine to go, you know, there's another way to gospel. There's another way to move the ball down the field. There's another way for us in Western Christianity to learn maybe from others around the world and really see a great harvest of lost people come into the kingdom. So, you know, maybe this is going to be a first step for somebody that's listening.
Yeah, amen. So thanks for listening. We're glad you're listening. And we're going to end this conversation today, but we'll pick up in the next one for next week. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeff, for that engaging download. In DMM, we like to say that disciples are learners. I know I'm learning a lot from my conversations with you, Jeff. From all of us in DMM NOCO, we hope you got a DMM download from the conversation today. Don't forget to leave this podcast a review wherever you are listening online. If you found this conversation helpful, please head over to our site, dmmnoco.com, where you can find more content for your DMM journey, including a self-paced Habits of a Multiplying Disciple course. The course is designed to give you practical next steps to becoming a DMM practitioner and multiplying disciple maker. You can take that course for free at dmmnoco.com. We will be back next week with another engaging DMM download episode. Until then, may you hear from God through His Spirit and take simple steps of obedience in what you hear.